everyone, I'm Trisha Card and I'm the clarinet professor at Sam Houston State University, and I'm here to help you get started on the ATSSB Clarinet Etudes for Year E. This video is going to focus on number 18, which is found on page 20, and we are in the key of G major. So the tempo for this etude is quarter note equals 60 to 69. I personally think musically it works a little bit better on the slower side, so I'm going to play around 60. We are starting after the 8th rest in measure 8, and we are going to play to the 8th rest in measure 16. A couple of notations you want to make note of. So in measure 15, the 13th 32nd note is an A natural, and then the dotted 8th note after that is also an A natural. Also in measure 15, the 32nd notes after that dotted 8th note should be a triplet. And then finally, the rhythm for measure 14 is notated on the ATSSB etude list. If you're not sure how the turns work, go pull up the list and it has it written out for you. All right, so we're going to go ahead and perform the etude. So I want to talk about the big concepts, or what I consider the most difficult elements of this etude. I'm going to talk about sound, musicality, rhythm, and technique. So for sound, oftentimes the intent or the goal of slow etudes is to really showcase the sound. And one of the best ways to work on sound is to incorporate long tones into your practice routine. I start every practice routine with some long tones. You put your metronome on 60, you could do some register slurs, you could do scales in whole notes, anything to just make sure that you're really paying attention to the elements that create sound. And I think one of the most important elements in sound production is air. So make sure you are keeping that really nice fast airstream, and we want to strive for a full sound in all of the registers. So this etude has a lot of fast notes, so really work to keep the sound the same regardless of what type of notes you're playing. So we hope to sound the same on the lyrical passages as we do on the technical passages. So with the musicality, if you carefully follow the dynamics and breathing suggestions, even in the learning stages, this is going to really help you to understand the length of the phrases, and it's going to help you to determine where the high point or where we are leading in each one of those phrases. Once you can kind of determine where that high point is, then you're going to shape accordingly. You're going to have a nice crescendo to that high point and a decrescendo away from that high point. We have a fairly passionate, expressive, or emotional character in this etude. And if you look at how the etude is built, how it was composed, that's going to help you create that style a little bit. So our excerpt starts off with a 2-measure phrase, which is followed by another 2-measure phrase, which is followed by a longer 4-measure phrase. So if we go through and we kind of look at how we're going to use our dynamics in these phrases, with the 2-measure phrase, you basically have a measure where you're going to feel like you crescendo all the way to the downbeat of the 2nd measure, arrive there, and then do a really nice release. And you're going to sound beautiful on those 2-measure phrases. When we get to the 4-measure phrase, I think this one's just a little bit more intense, primarily because it's just a longer phrase. So in measure 13, even though there's not a crescendo there, we still want to make sure that technique feels like it's leading. You can put a little crescendo in there to help you get to measure 14. Measure 14 does have a crescendo, and the notes keep getting higher, a little bit more intense, leads to measure 15. which is really the high point of this 4-measure phrase. And we have all those 30-second notes. So stay intense through those 30-second notes until we get to that nice little decrescendo. And then finally we get the big decrescendo in measure 16 with a really nice release in there. So this work incorporates a variety of rhythms, and let's face it, the 30-second notes are a little challenging. So if we find those measures and isolate them, what I want to do is have you practice with a subdivided beat to help make sure that your rhythm is correct. So I'm going to use measure 10 as an example, and I'm going to put my metronome on 100 for my 8th note pulse. So this means that my C is now going to get 3 clicks on the metronome. My group of 30-second notes is going to get 1 click, and then my G is going to get 2. Once that feels comfortable, you understand the pacing, you understand how fast those 30-second notes are supposed to go, then go get rid of your subdivision, put the metronome back on 50 for practice tempo, and see how it feels without the metronome providing that interior beat. You can still think it, but the metronome just isn't going to be giving it to you. If you perform it with a big beat, so no subdivision, I think it just has a better sense of a graceful feeling, and it'll get you to feel really lyrical and very nice. So the 30-second notes are also pretty technical, and so I want to practice those with a metronome. I'm going to isolate those measures, find a tempo where I know I can play everything. So I'm looking for a pretty slow tempo where I know my notes are correct and I know I have no hesitations. So I'm going to now take measure 13. I'm going to put my metronome on 80, and I'm just going to play this really slow and make sure that it's right. Let's say it works, but that's too much. Go play the first 2 groups. Once that feels good, play the last 2. So I think right now, my 80 is a really good starting point for my technical passage. So I'm going to very systematically work at that tempo until I feel really comfortable, and then I'm just going to slowly move the metronome up over a long period of time, like several weeks. Once I feel really good about my daily practice, then I'm going to write down that metronome marking so that when I come back the following day, I know where I started and where I ended, and maybe I back up just a little bit just to do some review, and then I'm going to see if I can't maybe push the tempo a little bit faster. One of the ways that I find that helps my muscles become really comfortable with these measures is to use practice rhythms, or what I call practice methods. So I have 4 different rhythms that I use. I have 2-note groupings and I have 4-note groupings. So what I'm going to start off with is probably the most popular one, which I'm going to make my rhythm long, short, long, short, long. So it sounds like it's a swing rhythm, it's just an uneven. I'm sticking with measure 13. Oh, didn't turn the metronome. Once that feels really good, go flip around the rhythm. So now I'm going to do short, long, short, long, short, long. Do that several times until you feel really good with that. The other rhythm that I use, the 4-note grouping, is a long, short, 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 long, short, 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 long, and flip that one around later. Practice that several times. Now let's go flip it around. So if you practice these different rhythms, your muscles are going to learn the patterns much quicker, and they're going to be really secure in their technique. So regardless of the tempo, your goal is to get these 30-second notes to sound easy and to sound controlled. Remember, this is really supposed to be an etude that showcases your sound and your lyrical qualities and not just a technical etude. So really make sure you have a strong sense of pulse and count carefully. So I hope you enjoy working on this beautiful etude. I think it is, it's wonderful. So the other thing I encourage you to do is go check out the SHSU Clarinet webpage, where I have performance guides for all 5 years of the ATSSB rotation. So good luck, and I hope you have a great year. Bye.